Guys, I've done it. I've cracked the code. I believe I figured out the whole plot of Spider-Man Brand New Day. So take a seat, get a snack, get a bev. I'm about to spoil this whole movie. So yeah, I believe I figured out the entire plot of Spider-Man Brand New Day. At least I think I have. Initially, I thought Sadie Sink's character was playing Jean Grey once I watched the trailer. And then I watched the trailer a bunch more times and I thought to myself, it's actually more fitting that she's playing Rachel Summers. However, even if she is still playing Jean Grey, this plot still runs exactly the same. Let's begin. So if you didn't know, Rachel Summers is the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey. She has very similar powers to Jean, a little bit less powerful, but this is from a comic story from an alternate universe, which in Avengers Doomsday we're getting plenty of alternate universes, and I think it makes sense for Marvel to use Rachel Summers instead of Jean Grey, as Jean Grey is a major X-Men character and I believe would take too much away from Spider-Man, as well as Jean Grey is very overpowered, and I think in this movie we're not really seeing too much from Sadie Sink's character, at least not in the trailer. We also see that she's easily been restrained, and it makes sense for more of a inexperienced Rachel Summers. However, the theory still runs very similar if this is Jean Grey, but like I said, I think it makes more sense for this to be Rachel Summers. But anyways, let's dive deeper now into the plot. So I believe this story begins with the arrival of Sadie Sink's character, Rachel Summers, maybe Jean Grey, but Rachel Summers, and I think she arrives here from another universe, and I think this will be very similar to how Monica Rambeau is in Rachel Summers' universe, an X-Men universe. I believe she arrives through a tear in reality because of these incursions that are going on, and I think it makes sense that she's from the X-Men universe that we see in the third Doomsday teaser, which in that teaser, we see Scott Summers in his comic accurate suit. We also see the return of Professor X and Magneto. And in the Marvel teaser trailer, again, we get a comic book accurate Beast, but we see some differences, like Binary being that universe. So we know this isn't the exact same universe from the Fox era of X-Men. Despite these being the same actors, but we've had numerous actors playing the same characters, but from different universes throughout the multiverse saga. However, I know in other universes, we've had different faces for different characters. But anyway, I believe that Rachel Summers arrives in this universe and that she's captured by Damage Control. Damage Control are the organization that capture super able individuals in the MCU. And I believe this is when we see her restrained in the trailer, like in these clips. And I think this is where the story will begin and pick up. With Rachel Summers being a mutant, it makes sense for Hulk to be the one who studies her, as Hulk is probably the only one in the MCU that actually has complex knowledge of mutations. For example, obviously his own mutation, and as there's very few smart individuals left in the MCU. Obviously Doctor Strange is no longer in the picture as he's off sorting out incursions. So I believe Damage Control will hire Bruce Banner to look into studying Rachel Summers and understanding what she is, where she came from, and how she's able to do what she does. Obviously in the MCU we haven't actually got any mutants, so it would make sense for them to reach out to someone like Hulk, who would be one of the few people with complex knowledge on mutations.
We're gonna need a really big brain.
Bigger than his?
And this is also where Spider-Man comes into the story later on, as Spider-Man is struggling with his own mutation, which eventually in the story we'll probably see him turn into Man-Spider. Hulk is also teaching at the same university that Peter is going to. So Hulk is hired to study her DNA. Rachel Summers' presence in this universe is actually what causes Peter's mutation into Man-Spider. Spider-Man seemed pretty fine all before the arrival of Sadie Sink's character, and now all of a sudden obviously we see him in the cocoon, we see him struggle with his powers, and we see him obviously seek the help of Hulk, who is also studying Rachel Summers' DNA at this point in the story. Like I said, nothing was wrong with Spider-Man until she shows up. Coincidence? I think not. Spider-Man's powers already come from a mutation anyway, and I think Rachel Summers being here, also being a mutant, and with her psychic abilities, is what triggers these powers to evolve more, therefore him becoming Man-Spider. So Spider-Man's powers already come from the spider bite, which caused his DNA to mutate. Obviously, Spider-Man isn't an X-Men, but his powers are from the spider bite, which caused his DNA to mutate, and they're tied to physical biology as well as mental state. And we've seen that in the Tobey Maguire movies, where Spider-Man's mental state affected his powers.
My back! Oh, my back!
And with Rachel Summers or Jean Grey having psychic abilities, I believe her influence is what causes his DNA to evolve more, which allows him to have the organic web shooters, as well as what causes further mutations, which eventually, towards the end of the movie, we'll see a full transformation into Man-Spider. So whilst Banner is conducting his research on Rachel Summers, we see her restrained in the damage control facility. This is when Rachel will use her psychic abilities to manipulate the Hulk, causing him to Hulk out, potentially even turning into the Grey Hulk, and this will cause a diversion which allows her to escape. We know from rumours, as well as the filming in Glasgow with the sequence with the tank, that Hulk is involved in that, and that is the reason why the Punisher is there. So this brings in the Punisher, who is here to neutralise the threat, being Hulk and Rachel Summers. His goal is to eliminate the problem. He doesn't care if he has to kill the Hulk or Rachel Summers, who is responsible for the Hulk hulking out, and this is what brings the Punisher into the story. So Spider-Man is just caught in the middle of this, trying to protect his mentor and trying to stop Rachel without her dying. With Rachel escaped from damage control, the Hulk on the loose, Rachel now free, and the Punisher taking matters into his own hands, we also see Scorpion, Boomerang and Tarantula in the trailer. Now initially watching the trailer, I thought these might have been snippets from the opening of the movie, but thinking more into this and thinking with the timeline of this movie, with Daredevil Season 2, the Punisher Marvel special, which comes straight afterwards, and then Brand New Day releasing a couple months after that, it made me think, who is behind all these random villains showing up? It's got to be the Kingpin. I believe the trailer gives us a sort of Easter egg of this, where we see there's a new mayor, but we don't have any information on what happened to Kingpin, whether he resigned, or if he was forced out of office, or if he's presumed dead.
I beat you!
It makes sense that the Kingpin is operating in the shadows, and this potentially might be his potential comeback back into power. I believe the Kingpin is responsible for Scorpion getting his suit, as well as potentially Boomerang and Tarantula. Now initially watching the trailer, I thought Tarantula and Boomerang were just random fights that we might get in the opening of the movie, but it also made me think it's within Kingpin's style to hire criminals to fight superheroes, and it would make sense for Kingpin, who has a lot of resources, for him to fund or provide Scorpion's suit as well as Boomerang's gear and Tarantula's gear. With the timeline of Homecoming coming out in 2016, and I mean in the MCU timeline, obviously I'm aware it came out in 2017, but the Homecoming story is set in 2016 and Brand New Day takes place in 2028. Scorpion may have served his sentence and already be free. However, I doubt straight after prison he's going to have enough funds to provide himself with his own Scorpion suit. I believe Kingpin is behind all of that, and I believe the hand is used by Kingpin as a final last resort after Scorpion, Boomerang and Tarantula fail him. This would make sense, as again we've seen this in the Daredevil series, and this would make sense for Kingpin to do all of this to try to regain his power after him losing his mayorship. Obviously Kingpin is no stranger for hiring criminals to fight heroes, so all factions converge. We've got Spider-Man right in the middle of this, dealing with his own mutation and trying to keep on top of his powers. He's also in the meantime struggling with his relationship with Ned and MJ, who still don't remember him from No Way Home. As we see in the trailer, he's reintroducing himself to him and they're getting to know him all over again. See, we're going to have damage control now after Sadie Sink's character, who's now on the loose. Hulk or Grey Hulk will remember Spider-Man. So coming up into the third act, once Spider-Man defeats Scorpion, Boomerang and Tarantula, we will see him further mutate, which is where in the third act, when he's fighting the Hand, in this shot of the trailer, this is where he will fully transform into Man-Spider. This part of the movie will be where Peter Parker would have been able to calm the Hulk down.
The sun's getting real low.
As the Hulk will remember who Spider-Man is, not Bruce Banner.
Only Hulk!
Peter Parker as well will have been able to persuade the Punisher that obviously the Hulk isn't at fault here. and that Sadie Sink's character just wants to go back to her own universe. And this is where we will see Kingpin send the Hand to finish the job. So in the climax of the movie, once Man-Spider has defeated the Hand, Spider-Man's able to get through to Rachel Summers, who in this movie will be sort of like an anti-villain, where she just wants to go home but has no problems taking down anyone that gets in her way. He'll be able to calm her down and bond with her, as he's also had experiences with the multiverse and understands that she needs to get home. However, with Doctor Strange being absent, this will be a problem, and this will take us later on into the post-credits of this movie. With Scorpion, the Hand, Boomerang and Tarantula defeated, this will be a step back for Kingpin, but this will progress later on into the next season or Daredevil or a future MCU project where Kingpin again will be working in the shadows to regain his power. It also makes sense once Hulk actually remembers Spider-Man, he's able to calm down and to return to Banner, and this is where we'll either have Banner restore Man-Spider back to Spider-Man, or Rachel Summers do this with her psychic abilities. So with all the villains defeated, the Punisher is no longer gunning for the Hulk. The Hulk is now back in control.
I see this as an absolute win.
Spider-Man is returned to his regular body, but maintaining his organic web shooters and enhanced strength and durability. The Kingpin is still at large and in the shadows. Villains are defeated and sent to the raft, and the Kingpin will probably return in a future MCU project later down the road. So Rachel remains in the MCU at the end of this movie, as there's no way to return her home, as no one in the MCU is capable of multiverse travel. I believe we'll see Hulk trying to work out a way, looking at his research with Tony Stark that they used on the time machine from Endgame, but that won't necessarily work to find her universe and way home. Doctor Strange is also still absent from the events of Doctor Strange 2, so for now Rachel remains in the MCU. And also Ned and MJ will not regain their memories of Peter and Spider-Man from what they lost after No Way Home. They will become friends again, just like they did in the Homecoming trilogy, and over time throughout this movie become friends, figure out who he is, and I'm sure there'll be a line later on in the movie where Peter will explain that they were once friends, and I'm sure it'll be a little bit similar to how it was with Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Touch.
Where they will still have some sort of friendship, but it won't be quite the same. But this will lead for future developments in future Spider-Man films where MJ will fall in love with Peter all over again, as well as Ned remaining friends with Peter, etc, etc. So now post-credit scene time. Don't think we're going to get any Venom symbiotes. I think that might be saved for the actual Doomsday movie. But in this post-credit scene, we see Monica Rambeau with the X-Men, just like we did from the Marvel's post-credit scene. In the post-credit scene, we learn that the X-Men can't multiverse travel yet, and Monica Rambeau is still stranded there. But they learn they are locked onto a incursion with Universe 616, the MCU. So they're all in the X-Mansion, in the same lab that we see them in the Marvel's post-credit scene. Beast and Professor X are analysing multiversal data. Monica Rambeau is present with Binary, and we see Beast say something like, "There's been another multiversal breach." Professor X, using his psychic abilities, noticed one of us is missing. This is when Cyclops comes in and says, "It's Rachel, she's gone." Or if Sadie Sink's character actually is Jean Grey, which again, don't think it is, perhaps he'll say, "It's Jean Grey, she's gone." They all argue and panic on how to get her back. Emotions are high for Cyclops, his daughter is missing, and then everything goes quiet. Dr. Doom enters the room. You're looking in the wrong direction. Everyone turns. The X-Men are about to attack, but Professor X hears him out. Doom, quiet and controlled. The problem isn't her, it's what universe she's in. Earth 616. That world is causing the incursions, and they're dangerous. end scene. Cuts to black. And this is where something like that, I don't know, obviously it's not going to be word for word. I'm no leaker or hacker. I believe we're going to get a scene just like this in Brand New Day, if my theory checks out, that the post-credit scene will basically be the X-Men noticing that Rachel Summers is missing, trying to find out a way to get her back, and then Doctor Doom showing up right at the end and planting the seeds for conflict with the X-Men and the Avengers.
Fuck the Avengers. Yeah.
And that obviously only one universe can survive this incursion, and it's either they or them. And also the idea that Scott's daughter is somewhere dangerous and that the stakes are extremely high. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the plot of Brand New Day, as well as the post-credit scene for Avengers Doomsday. Please let me know what you think of my theory down in the comments below. I know it's a bit of a mad one, but I do think it is quite tangible. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I've got plenty more theories coming up soon. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you in the next one.